I really enjoyed that talk. Again, we met at Melville's seminar in 2006, and I've been enriched by our friendship. And I have to say I've been enriched by many friendships made through the center, and I thank the center very much for that, and for the staff. Even, our sound people, we got Joel and Josiah. He's actually awake up there. It's good to see. It's sunny and warm, I understand. I was afraid we might have a kind of an Andy Warhol type of film of the conference, but I think it'll be rich. I'm going to talk about Emerson a little bit. We did not share notes, and I think it's interesting how some of these panel discussions weave together. In January of this year, 2 English professors from the University of Hartford published an essay in the Chronicle of Higher Education called "Giving Emerson the Boot." Are the authors of this essay present? Okay. No, actually, that would kind of fit into this idea of heroism, I should be honest. They said that they're weary of the cult of Ralph Waldo Emerson, and they confessed the grave mistake of this unseeming idolatry of one of America's most confounding writers. Their message is fairly unambiguous. Let's stop teaching Emerson. He's really not very useful. Well, in an uncharacteristic moment of public action, perhaps even with the literal meaning of hero as protector and defender in mind, I wrote a letter to the Chronicle and challenged the booting of Emerson, and they printed it. In expunging Emerson, the critics promised that we'd get rid of contradictory, baffling, radical, reactionary ideas that offer no practical guidelines for actual human behavior. I had to ask if they've ever read Emily Dickinson. Then they said Emerson is, quote, gorged on nature, spirit, reason, understanding, and virtue. Gee, squeeze in a little sex for dessert, and there goes Whitman. But the critics' biggest issue was that Emerson is just not a good writer, that he generates, quote, the prose of a crazy person. Well, I might be crazy, but I actually like Emerson. And I think that I find his enigmatic, darkly obscure language that suddenly opens up bright and bold beautiful. His essays are as wild as poems. In my classroom, anyway, the old wizard still raises hands and comments, simmering with discovery, agitation, delight, and recognition at just how crazy we might be to believe in ourselves or anything. To be honest, Emerson inspires me. I mean, sure, he was a great social critic of rampant capitalism, materialism, slavery. He championed the life of the mind against the mind-numbing pressures of philosophical conformity and social success. Yes, he was refreshing, original, even kind of trippy in his approach to the mystical and spiritual opportunities for enlightenment. But he was also gutsy. Divinity School address, 1838, given to the graduating class of Harvard ministers, where he questions the divinity of Christ. He calls the church dry, false, and moribund. He says, speak the truth as your life and conscience teach it. Well, he wasn't asked back for a long time. But 172 years later, I'm contemplating my own address. Intellectual heroes don't usually inspire by complicating or subtilizing issues, but by simplifying and polarizing them. For all his complexity, paradoxes, and loopy self-awareness, Emerson can also be simple and direct in telling us how to live. It's the mark of an idealist. So I turned to one of his little-known essays from the first series, 1841, called Heroism. And I'll read you a couple Emerson quotes, and they're so distinctly Emersonian. This is great. Our culture, therefore, must not omit the arming of man. You're going to hear a lot of military language in this essay. Hang on, don't get too crazy over here. Let him hear in season that he is born into the state of war. Emerson's talking about the hero. And that the Commonwealth and his own well-being require that he should not go dancing in the weeds of peace. Dancing in the weeds of peace sounds like something to do in Oregon. And neither defying nor dreading the thunder, let him take both reputation and life in his hand. Okay? The hero, also from this essay, the hero assumes a warlike attitude and affirms his ability to cope single-handed with the infinite army of enemies. To his military attitude of the soul, we give the name heroism. Okay? Self-trust is the essence of heroism. And do not look back on your words when you find that prudent people do not commend you. Be true to your own act, right? Isn't that so Emersonian? Be true to your own act. So simple. Congratulate yourself if you have done something strange and extravagant and broken the monotony of a decorous age. And finally, this one. Heroism feels and never reasons, and therefore is always right. Okay. Useful advice for our students, right? Okay. So, of course, heroism is courage to speak your own mind, but heroism is dangerous, okay? It's dangerous to your comfort and to your happiness, okay? Heroism is a kind of simplification, okay? It's interesting that every other panel was, as John said, introduced with a question. We're just intellectual heroes. Simplified, reduced. Okay. So I'm going to propose, in a simple way, a hero. And he comes from the sciences. I appreciated all this interest in crossing over disciplines. And so I chose Richard Dawkins, a British biologist, ethologist, evolutionary expert, a writer. He's one of the so-called new atheists. I think Daniel Dennett may be included in that group, and Mr. Dennett was a speaker at this center, I understand, a couple years ago. And so let's look at Richard Dawkins' work for a moment. He became internationally famous with his 1976 book, The Selfish Gene, which promoted a gene-centered view of evolution. He also kind of developed the term meme as a kind of cultural equivalent to genotype. But his heroic work, in my opinion, is his 1986 book, The Blind Watchmaker, drawing from the wonderful watchmaker analogy that William Paley put forth in the 18th century. That clearly, looking at creation, someone must have made this. It's very sophisticated. But of course, Dawkins says that evolutionary process explains that anything can be made, including this watch, which was made by a human. So it all works out. But Dawkins feels, like Emerson, the increasing need to dispel worthless old thought, namely religion and the notion of God. Thus Dawkins' most famous book, The God Delusion, 2006. Here he contends that a supernatural creator does not exist, and faith is a delusion. Evolutionist, scientific rationalist, secular humanist, skeptic, atheist. Did you detect the tremble in my voice when I say atheist? Well, Dawkins says atheists should be proud, not apologetic, because atheism is evidence of a healthy, independent mind. I'm a little nervous about that. Dawkins goes on Bill Moyers. Dawkins launches the Atheist Bus Campaign, where they put placards on buses in London that say, there's probably no God, so don't worry. That's simple enough. Well, in 2007, the Archbishop of Canterbury, Rowan Williams, called Dawkins a militant atheist. Now, remember Emerson, to his military attitude of the soul, we give the name of heroism. Faith, Dawkins says, is a belief not based on evidence. It is one of the world's great evils. After the September 11th, 2002 attacks, Dawkins published an article in The Guardian where he says, we may have just thought religion was fine for those that wanted to believe it. What harm could it do? It does a lot of good, actually, in community building. But after that event, he said, no, it's dangerous, okay? Faith gives people false courage to kill themselves, which automatically removes normal barriers to killing others, okay? It's dangerous because it teaches hate of others labeled only by a difference of inherited tradition. Remember Emerson's concern over inherited tradition. And dangerous because we have brought to religion a weird respect which uniquely protects religion from normal criticism. Dawkins says, let's stop being so damn respectful. Now, it's interesting. Pericles Lewis here comments about giving religion some attention. And I respect religion. I'm very interested in the study of religion. I love reading the Bible. But am I being a coward? Should the hero in me really do something courageous and assert something that I guess I believe in? I really don't believe. And I'm outing myself today. I mean, I thought, why not take an opportunity with an audience and actually say something that personally is kind of heroic for me. I'm an atheist. Well, is this really useful? I mean, the astrophysicist Martin Rees finds Dawkins' attack on mainstream religion unhelpful. He says in Our Cosmic Habitat that, there's some questions that lie beyond science. And Stephen Jay Gould had always had those overlapping magisteria, things we can't explain some things. Dawkins says he loved Gould. Gould was a great colleague at Harvard. And he said, but Gould was playing to the middle of the road. He was politicking to win people over. He didn't want to alienate people. And he says, Martin Rees, there's a lot of things, that science can explain. And a lot of things it can't explain. But as Dawkins says, what experience, what expertise can theologians bring to deep cosmological questions that a scientist cannot? This is coming from someone who's in the humanities, who's committed to poetry and literature. But I'm telling you, I'm really paying attention to Dawkins. Dawkins stands strong. Why can't I? I believe creationism is wrong, even harmful. Why can't I join more vociferously in the fight? If you read my poems, you'd know where I stand, but if you were my friend, you might not. Am I truly divided like Melville or Dickinson? Remember what Hawthorne said of Melville. He can neither believe nor be comfortable in his unbelief, and he is too honest and courageous not to try to do one or the other. I love the idea of God, the mystery and personified poetry of God. But no, I don't believe. Christianity is a mythology for me. So why can't I out myself more openly? Why can't I tell my students that? Maybe that's the problem. Would that change the way I worked as a teacher? Would it make me less effective as a teacher? It's my friends, it's my society. I like them, I respect it. I respect and honor my friends. My wife's father, a retired physician, a man of science, and a devout Anglican, lives a condemning stone's throw from Richard Dawkins in Oxford. It would break his heart if I started publishing atheist tracts. But closer to home, our secretary in the English department, my running partner, our neighbors, they're all passionate Christians. I cherish the sociability of my life. Remembering Melville again from the first chapter of Moby Dick, quote, not ignoring what is good, I am quick to perceive a horror, and could still be social with it, would they let me, since it is all but well to be on friendly terms with all the inmates of the place one lodges in. Then again, a little later in the novel, Father Mapple demands that we preach truth to the face of falsehood. Woe to him who seeks to please rather than appall. Heroism is risky. I'm sure like many of you, you try to be neutral in your classrooms. You try to approach the text. I love teaching Whitman and Melville and Dickinson and Emerson. But I don't automatically say that I believe exactly what they're saying. I promote and celebrate their work and let the text do that job. Would it change my effectiveness if I became an activist for atheism or an activist against religion in my community? That's a big question. And so for me, heroism is, in fact, taking those risks. It's doing something gutsy. It's doing something more than just writing a letter to the Chronicle. I thank you very much.